A new firmware upgrade for the Modor DR2 that adds a number of smaller new features, but especially that adds bassline synthesis. I am Marcel of Modor Music, the designer of the DR2. Let's have a look at all these new features. Let's look at the smaller new features first. Firstly, it is now possible to enable and disable sequencer tracks, instrument tracks, by using Midi controllers or Midi nodes. If you turn the Midi CC enable disable option on in the system settings, you can from now on use controller 95 to enable and disable instrument tracks. A value of 63 puts all tracks on, a value of 0 puts them all off. And the values in between make combinations following the binary ones and zeros in the controller value. For example, a value of 38 means that instruments F, C and B are enabled. Of course, I understand that this is not the most convenient method for most people. It's a handy shortcut for those who know binary counting, but for the rest of us we also included another option now. If you put the Midi note enable disable option on in the system settings menu, you can now use the notes in the octave from C0 to B0 to enable and disable instrument tracks. Sending a Do means that instrument A is disabled, Do sharp puts instrument A on. A Re puts instrument B off, while Re sharp puts it on, and so on. The second new feature, a global accent level. Keep the accent button down and turn swing value to set the global accent level. The Modor DR2 has two different types of accents. There are single instrument accents that are programmed by keeping the accent button down and hitting a few sequencer steps. And there's also the global accent track that's accessed by simply hitting the accent button a single time. The global accent level determines the intensity of these global accents alone, apart from the single instrument accents. Remember that you can set an instrument's sensitivity to velocity changes and accents by keeping the velocity button down and moving the fader up and down for the volume response. You can also connect a second parameter to velocity changes and accents by keeping again the velocity button down and turning a parameter knob. And then thirdly, it is possible to create longer bars than 16 steps now. If you want to create a track in a 5/4 meter, for example, or in a 7/4, you would want to have 20 steps or 28 steps in a bar instead of a maximum of 16. That is possible from now on. On previous firmware versions, it was possible to set a certain bar length, a certain number of steps, by keeping the shift button down and hitting a step button. That remains the same, but first hit the second page button now, 17 to 32, and then hit the step button to set, for example, 20 steps for a 5/4 meter. It is even possible to extend bars over 3 or 4 pages if you want to build a track in a 9/4 meter or something even longer. By using a bar length stretched over 2 pages, there are still 2 pages left behind the 33 to 48 and 49 to 64 page buttons. These can, as before, still be used as a second variation or a fill-in, or they still can be changed to form a multiple bar loop. Alright, but then finally the most important new feature of this firmware upgrade, basslines or bassline synthesis models. Back in the days when we designed the DR2, it wasn't our plan to give the DR2 bassline functionalities. It's a drum machine, so let's keep our main focus. But through time, with all the firmware upgrades, and especially with the introduction of parameter locking in OS7, it became possible to program little melodies in the DR2 by using parameter locks on the pitch parameter. And so we decided to give the DR2 a few extra models, specially dedicated to bassline synthesis. The transient click that you find on many of the bass drum models has been removed, and it's been replaced by a portamento parameter to make little slides and glides between the notes in a bass line. And also the pitch parameter locks work relative to the root note, so that it becomes easy to transpose the bass line by just turning the pitch knob or sending it a controller value. We built 4 bassline synthesizer models, a subtractive saw synth and square synth that have a sawtooth and a square oscillator with a resonant filter and an envelope on it. Then there is our sine synth that has 3 sine wave oscillators, each 1 octave apart, and a little drive parameter. And there is the FM synth that uses a 2-operator FM setup to create typical FM bass lines. So, how does all that sound? Let's hear a few examples. So that's our new firmware upgrade, OS13 for the Modor DR2. Thanks for watching, and if you like it, give us a thumbs up below. Bye!